Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. January 28th, 2019. First up, a story from CNN that the Nigerian election is thrown into chaos as the president has faced criticism for suspending the country's top judge. President Muhammad Buhari has come under intense scrutiny for his suspension of the country's chief justice just weeks before a general election, in a move that critics have called tyrannical and unconstitutional. The president has defended his action, saying the judge failed to disclose bank accounts in foreign currencies. It's very interesting that the Nigerian president would accuse someone else of corruption. Next up, the Venezuelan crisis, and the BBC reports that the White House will respond to all threats against not only American citizens but also American diplomats. This is incredibly important for U.S. companies, as if you still have citizens in Venezuela, you need to take extraordinary measures at this point to protect them and also be ready for regime change going forward. Finally, or rather, next, from the New York Times, another side of Me Too. Reporting from Davos, men attending the annual summit of the World's Economic Forum are worried about a lot of things, including mentoring women in a Me Too era. One American finance executive said, I think twice about spending one-on-one time with a young female colleague. It's just too sensitive. So this is a really interesting response to the Me Too movement, where men are now apparently afraid to be alone with women for what they may claim later. Of course, if you keep your hands off women and don't sexually harass them verbally, you can go a long way towards protecting yourself. But some men apparently are afraid to be alone because they will apparently get into trouble. And finally, we end with a story about the Beatles' last concert, which, of course, was the rooftop concert for the album Let It Bleed. The rooftop concert was on January 30, 1969, and it was reported by Peter Brown, who was actually there in his official capacity as CEO of the Apple Corporation. The concert itself was not shut down by the police. They actually ended the concert on time. Mr. Brown pointed out that as the Beatles owned the building through Apple Corporation, they could not be forced to leave their own building, and that the noise coming from the building was actually not that loud. So while many of us grew up believing that the Beatles were shut down by the police, turns out that's not quite true. It's a great article. I commend it to you, and hopefully you subscribe to the FT. Particularly on Saturday, they have some really interesting articles. This is Tom Fox. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Daily Compliance News. This is Tom Fox. If you have any ideas for the Daily Compliance News, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I'd love to hear from you. This is Tom Fox. I'm the Compliance Evangelist. As you may know, we've had several new offerings on the Compliance Podcast Network. One of those includes Popcorn and Compliance, where Jay Rosen and I take a look at compliance through the lens of movies, both current, contemporary movies, and classic movies. Also premiering in December. And finally, Mary Shirley and Lisa Fine have premiered their new podcast, Great Women on Compliance. I hope you will check that out. It's a great podcast series. We have several other offerings that we are in production and will go live after the first of the year on the Compliance Podcast Network.